First of all, thank you guys and ladies for being here. Excited about where we are this spring. But, as I look back, 2021 was a great growing experience for our staff, for our team. Defensively had an opportunity to, and I say opportunity today after you do it, to change the defense and then to insert some transfers into our program. And then, all that culminated with the bowl victory there in Houston. So I had an opportunity for my mom to be able to see me coach. And, of course, she has still many suggestions as to how I could do a better job. And then we went into the off season, and that was a great experience, we think, for our players. Had the opportunity to watch Coach True and his staff after a full cycle for them. Change bodies on our team. No coaches' bodies changed, but many of our players, they came back into the spring looking differently, and it was because of the work that Coach True and his staff did. I think when you have success, it's always good to go back into and look at the things that you thought went well. And one of the things that we made a decision about amongst our staff and within our team is that we wanted to put some values, which you see around this building, into our program, and our core values of discipline, commitment, toughness, selflessness. Those things, with Coach Kleiman's leadership, they really took over, and our players and our leadership on our team took over in that way. And so after having what we would consider a successful season, we just felt it really important to go back and dig those core values up and make sure that through this off season that our players understood that those things are important, and that's what we were about. And so as we go into the spring, it's been, of course, we've only had 3 practices. This time last year, I believe I came in here and said, "Oh, these are the greatest practices we've ever had." Well, I won't say that, but what I will say is that we're on the right track. We have a long way to go. I told the cornerbacks the other day, we're walking to Houston, and we hadn't even gotten to Oklahoma yet. All right, so there's a long way to go. We have very limited opportunities in the spring, but we believe we are on the right track. As a team, as a staff, we feel like we are on the right track. And so we're excited about where we're going. And with that, I'll open that thing up to questions.
What makes Thad Ward a good fit for this coaching staff now that he's been around a little bit longer?
Well, as Coach Kleiman went to find a coach, the next wide receiver coach, it was going to be important that we had a guy that had credibility with our players, credibility with recruits. And Thad has coached some tremendous players who have had careers in the NFL, and that's what recruits look at, and that's what our players look at. And so that was going to be important in the process. But then to be able to hire a coach who was important, who was big on relationships with his players, again, that was something that would be important to our staff. That would be something that we felt like in the recruiting process will be important. And then a guy who would bring, and I don't coach offense, but a guy who would bring ideas to our offensive staff. And so Thad, he checked all of those boxes and others, but those were very important factors in bringing him here. And since he's been here, he's been exactly that, and again, and more.
You have a new transfer in your room with Josh Hayes. How does he kind of fit? And just 3 practices, just what do you feel about how he's performed so far?
Well, the fact is that Josh is an older player, right? He's a guy who's been around, and he has relationships with Coach Kleiman. He has relationships with Coach Klanderman. So there's some familiarity with him in those ways. But when you bring a guy with maturity, when you bring a guy who handles his business, which that's the kind of person he is, it's refreshing as a coach to bring that guy. He comes in with leadership. No, he doesn't know all the names, but he's played a lot of football, and our players give him, our younger players especially, give him a certain amount of credibility as he walks into the room. And so as you want to continue to develop the room, as you want to continue to develop the players in the room, bringing a Josh in he does that for us. Not only in the cornerback room, but from a defensive standpoint, he's brought that.
You touched on some of this in your open, but a year ago, you're coming out of an unprecedented COVID year. You're putting in a new defense. You had some really into the transfer portal full bore for the first time. How much more settled or familiar does this spring feel to you?
Well, from a defensive standpoint, we've been together. It seems like 10 years, and that's a level of comfort for our staff. But then when you talk about the transfer portal and us diving into it very deeply last season, well, we really got lucky because we got some guys that I talked about, Josh, earlier. We got some guys who came in with tremendous leadership. We got some guys who came in with great personalities. They were great team players, so they fit exactly what we needed at the moment. And it's cool because the guys that we recruited from the transfer portal this season, they had to measure up to the standards that the Tim Horns and the Julius Brents of last season. They had to measure up to those standards, and the guys that we brought in this year, they did, and so that's exciting. But compared to last year, we had an idea of what the portal recruiting would be like. We have now an idea of or a great direction for where we want to be defensively, and so it's a lot more settling. It's a lot more settling feeling. Not entirely settling because I continue to get gray hairs, and that's just what happens, I guess, when you get to be 66. Some of you guys would know that.
As a defensive coach, you've got some depth issues right now because of injuries at positions. How difficult is it to get through practices and do the things you want to do?
Well, there is some challenge with that, but you have to look at it when you have injuries. You have to look at it. Of course, there's a guy who can't be out there, and man, there's a lot of those guys, too many to even name. But there's another guy who is getting the opportunity to be out there. Titus Tuiasosopo is getting many opportunities to be out there. And as a young player, that's what you look for in the spring. You want to do everything you can to develop the younger players. You like to put your starters out there because they look really cute as they run the defense, right? And it looks good because they understand the schemes, they understand the checks. But really, what you want to do is have an opportunity to develop your team. And coaches, we always consider that a challenge, and it is, but there's light at the end of the rainbow. It ultimately it is developing your younger players, And so as we get all 56 of these guys who are on the injury report, as we get those guys healed up, it's giving many of our, especially on the defensive line, it's giving many of our younger players an opportunity to get reps, many more reps than they would have ever anticipated. But it's helping our team, at the end of the day.
This is probably the most important question of my career. You and Coach Ward and Anderson have had some very visible cook-offs going on here. Jerome Tang, the new basketball coach, claims to be a chef. Can a basketball coach keep up with your guys' cooking?
I refuse to answer on the grounds that it may incriminate me.
With the shift in defensive formation, what would you say was the tipping point for the 2021 defense where it began to make progress?
Well, I think, when you play defense, you want to be aggressive. You want to play fast. And when you change systems, when you change schemes, there is well, at least for us, there's a considerable amount of hesitance, right? Am I doing this the right way? And there came a point, and actually we saw flashes throughout the season, but there came a point where our guys really settled in. Number one, we as a staff, we pare down things. Sometimes as a coach you want to do a lot, because it's cool to do a lot. But for our players, it's more cool to not do a lot, right? Because you put them in a situation where they know exactly what they're doing, they understand, and they can play fast. And so I won't say that I don't even have a moment in the season, but toward the end of the season, you could see our guys have a different level of comfort in the game. You saw them have a different level of comfort as they made checks. And then when we got into the bowl game with so much uncertainty as to who we would be playing, and would it be a quarterback? Would this quarterback, that quarterback? Which receivers would play? Our guys were at a moment where it didn't matter to them because they understood what their jobs were. And so when you get to that place from a defensive standpoint, then I think you have command of the game.
And beyond Boydo and Brents, how do you see the cornerback room kind of shaking out right now?
Well, we've had a few guys, younger guys, who didn't get as many opportunities as Boydo and Brents did, from Omar Daniels, who was injured most of the season, to Darrell Jones, who's a young player who spent a lot of time on the scout teams. And so it's been good to see those guys, as well as Jarius Kennedy and Jalen Carter. Those guys get opportunities. Vaughn Malone is a guy, I know his mom, get an opportunity to, to get out there and get reps in the spring, which, again, I say the spring is the opportunity for guys. It's hope for guys who they see Boydo, they see Brents, and they think, I'll never get a shot. But you give them the opportunities in the spring so that they know, well, I'm just not ready yet. Or you know what, I think I've grown quite a bit and I should get a shot, coach. And so it's exciting for me to be able to watch not just that position, which is my position, but guys along the defense to be able to get those opportunities.
Who are you most looking forward to seeing if they can fill in for guys like Russ and Jerron and everybody else you lost at safety last season?
Well, at safety, it's again, because a lot of guys are getting opportunities, but Sean Robinson has shown quite a bit in the offseason as well as, early in the spring. Kobe Savage has shown some flashes. TJ Smith, who is a young player, but, we almost regard him as an older player. He's a younger player, and so he's done a pretty good job as we've moved forward. Those are the guys who have stood out so far for me. Not even in the secondary, but Brandon Jennings, who is a transfer, and I've seen some flashes with him. He has tremendous size. He runs, but he's young. He's a young player, and that's what I see is a lot of young guys out there moving around. And again, like in the T.J. Smith case, you've seen him play, and you regard him as an older player, but he's very young in his career. So I continually say that this guy is going to be a good player for us over time.
I also wanted to ask, how much different is it to have Colin as offensive coordinator? Does he have more of a voice in the coaching room now? And what have you seen from the offense just in the brief time he's been in charge of it?
Well, they've done some different things. Well, of course, they're always a challenge for us, just with as much movement as they do, as much motion and shifting as they do. So I don't think that is left. But I think Colin, I'm excited for him to get the opportunity, because I think what I've seen is more of the offensive guys. I can see the flavor of different people. I can see Thad's flavor, in our offense. But I also see things from a quarterback's standpoint, from a quarterback's vision. I see things that we're doing a little bit different in terms of the speed that we move offensively. And we're still offensively in the growing stages, and Colin is going to be a great offensive coordinator. But I see, some exciting things for our offense. Again, I see some input from the other coaches on the staff. So I think as a group, they'll do a good job of giving Colin input, and he'll do a good job of continuing to make my hair gray this spring.
You briefly mentioned it, and it was talked about a couple weeks ago about the offenses moving faster. Specifically, what does that mean? Are you snapping the ball a lot faster?
Yeah, well, we face it quite often in the Big 12 where Offenses, they don't sub as much. In the past, we had a lot. Again, I don't coach offense, but we have a lot of offensive packages. Well, when you have a lot of offensive packages, that helps me. That helps the defense, right? In a way, it prohibits the defense because I can't call my defense until I understand what package you are going to present to me. But when you present the same look, when you present the same personnel, then there's a challenge for me because I can't. You can align quickly. Right, and so I can't sub. If I needed to sub, I can't sub. So that's one of the things that I see, and I think for our players, it gives our offensive players an opportunity to stay on the field and play. You know what I mean? If I was a wide receiver, I'd want to stay on the field and get an opportunity to catch more balls. Well, if I'm not on the field, then I don't get those opportunities. So. It's that, right? There's a different level of intensity when you operate in that way from the offensive standpoint, and it creates a little bit of anxiety from the defensive standpoint. And so when you have offenses that align quickly, that change plays on the line of scrimmage, well, I mean, again, there creates a certain level of anxiety for us defensive coaches. And I'm not telling you any more about that.
How's Jax doing at running back?
Jax is a physical runner, right? He's not the smallest guy in the world, so he's hard to bring down. He's an intimidating presence as he's coming toward you. So that nothing changes in that way with Jax, but he's done a good job of catching the ball out of the backfield. He's always been a really good blocker, and so I think he will continue to flourish in the offense and the things that they'll ask him to do.
So you said you weren't going to talk more about the offense, but
no, I don't. There's no reason for me to tell you that these guys are coming out in 5 wides and they're running the wishbone the very next play. No reason for me to bring that up.
No, I'm curious because you've had more deliberate pace on offense before, but part of that was presumably to help keep the defense off the field too. So is there maybe going to be more of a challenge playing more defensive snaps with this offense?
Yeah, and that's always an issue. And I would not, again, I wouldn't say, I just said I wasn't going to talk about this, but I wouldn't say that we're moving at the pace that a lot of the teams. There's some teams that they move at lightning speed. We're not doing that, but we're like I said, it's just more challenging, right? Of course, when it's your offense that is moving faster, if they move at a pace that of some of the teams that we face, then it gets to be more difficult. You're playing more snaps. I would not characterize our offense as that, but the pace is accelerated. The pace is more intense, and again, that puts a challenge that makes it more difficult for the defense to get yourselves aligned, right? If you go to the line very quickly, I have to align very quickly. Doesn't mean you have to snap the ball, right? And so there's a certain amount of anxiety that is created just by you getting yourself as an offense getting aligned quickly. That's it.
I would like to ask about Julius and Echo and how you, I guess, motivate them to be even better than they were a year ago, and they were darn consistent. How do you go about that?
One of the things, and we talk about this in the spring. We've only had 3 practices, but one of the things that we said, or that I said when I came into the room in fall camp, is that what we want to do as players and what you want to do as an individual is that at the end of the season, you want to be playing your best football, right? And I don't know if as a cornerback group, and I don't know if as a coach in the past 2 seasons we did that, right? And so we talked about the fact that at the end of the season, we want to be playing our best football. And I'm not great at drawing, but I drew a little graph that was going upward, right? We want at the end of the year, you want to be trending upward. People say they remember November, right? And so at the end of the year, you want to play your best football. Well, we just carried that over to the spring, right? We get 15 opportunities. And if we take advantage of every single opportunity and think of it in that way, and then practice 1 and practice 2, we even broke it down even more and said, okay, we get 24 opportunities to get better in every opportunity. So you have a responsibility to go into the special teams period and get better throughout that period. And I think when you look at it in that way, and that's what we've done as a cornerback family, as a cornerback group with me as a coach, is we've worked and talked about continually getting better. That, again, we're going to Houston and we're still in Kansas, right? And so working to get better every single play. And those guys have grabbed onto that. And Julius and Echo being leaders on our team, I would hope that would filter to other positions as well, that we have that mindset.
In addition, you mentioned Darrell and Omar, and I'm curious as to, where they're at right now. I know both are young. Both, you mentioned scout team and injury. And motivating them to really push those other guys.
Well, we're going to Houston, and those guys are still in Manhattan right now, right? So they definitely have a long way to go, but they both work hard. They both, through the time with Coach True in the off season, they've been guys that he's highlighted as to be guys that we need to continue to have an eye on, because they did great things in the off season. So I'm excited about where they are. When you have a young guy at this position, you want to know if Julius Brents is clear. He's bigger than most offensive tackles, right? So those guys are not as big, and so we want to continue to develop them physically so that they can aspire to one day be, a guy that is strong and as powerful in the upper body as Julius Brent, so that you can get your hands on and dominate receivers down the field. They're not in that place yet, but I'm excited for their attitudes and for their direction in that way.
And I just had a couple questions about Echo. Can you speak to his leadership capabilities and what you've seen from him?
Who is that, Echo? Yeah. Echo, I don't know if he feel comfortable. I don't care if he feel comfortable. I'm going to share it anyway. Echo, when we first got here, he sent me a text message about he had run a good 40 time, or he did something, and he had a video text message. Well, just before that message he sent me, I'd also gotten a report of him missing something, right? And so I sent back to him, hey man, I don't care about your speed. I care about you doing the things you're supposed to do, being where you're supposed to be. So I just dashed that. As a coach, when you send your coach, hey, coach, check me out, and you dash water on that. In a way, I felt bad. But today, I feel really good about that, because from that moment, Echo knew that it was about more than what you do on the field. It's about the complete package. And that's what he's been. Right? Since that moment, he's been a guy who's taken care of his business, who has, of course, performed on the field. When we got here, he had tremendous issues trying to gain weight, but he's worked on that, and he's gained weight. Right? He's where we want him to be in terms of his weight. And so when you do that, you have credibility to be a leader. He does not say much. He's not one of the rah-rah guys, but the people on our team, they respect him. When he says things, they listen. He's an intense competitor, and I feel that, and he's on our leadership council, I feel like he is in a great place as a leader on our team.
And as far as his on-field knowledge and just being a tactician and his technique, can you break that down a little bit and let us know how he's been able to grow in those areas?
Well, he's always been a coachable guy, right? He's always been a guy who has taken coaching. He's always been a guy, when you look at the reports to see who's watching film, even when he didn't play as much, he was on the list for guys watching film. He's on the list for guys trying to get better. And so I've never had an issue with him in that way. He works hard at practice, and then he also takes guys. We talk in our room quite a bit about doing extra, and so I always will see him grabbing guys to do extra, along with him. So again, I couldn't say more positive things about who he is, and from that text message, where he's grown from.
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else?
Yeah, with Khalid Duke, realizing he's limited this spring, but just how exciting is it to have him back in the fold for 2022?
Well, he's a tremendous player. Of course, when Khalid came, he was a linebacker, and we moved him to defensive end, and he reminds me of another player, Von Miller, that we coached, who came into the program as a linebacker, moved him to defensive end, and he was a lights out player, and that is what we've kind of seen from Khalid Duke. And it's important for him to get healthy. But one thing I always am pleased with Khalid is that even though he's injured, and honestly, this happens with many of the guys who are out and not playing. They're right on. I mean, they're almost in the way because they are right in there. They're watching every play. They're commenting. They're talking. They're grabbing guys to be able to help them, younger guys and new guys to be able to help them see. And so that's one of the things. And Khalid, just like I talked about Echo, he doesn't say much, right? But on the football field, he's a hard-working guy. He is a communicator on the field. He's always grabbing guys to try to help them see, and so that's something that I've been pleased with Khalid, and I honestly think that when that guy does get back on the field, we're gonna see some special things brewing.